With the advent of climate change, the last few years have seen the rise of eco-horror, and I think this trend will continue, echoing what's happening in our real life, giving us fantastical versions, somewhat as a cautionary tale. And this is the case with Unearth. This is a movie directed by John C. Lyons and Dorota Swice, and it stars genre favourite Adrienne Barbeau and Buffy the Vampire Slayer star Mark Blucas. Now, I was reminded a hell of a lot of another movie whilst watching this one, that one being the 1987 movie called The Curse that starred Will Wheaton. A very similar story in a lot of ways, and you can have definite parallels to this movie. I know there was a newer version of that film called The Colour of Space with Nicolas Cage. I have not seen that, so I can't really comment on that version of The Curse, so to speak. But I know I have seen the original Curse, and I really enjoyed it. So here we have Unearth. So the story here focuses on two families, two neighbours in this rural farming community. And both of these families are struggling, both financially and with a variety of kind of personal issues within both their families as well. And it really shows you the grind, so to speak, that maybe life can have on people and how it wears people down, and kind of these issues that are exacerbated by, a variety of kind of outside factors. And then we have this seemingly white knight in this industrial company that wants to drill into their land to get natural gas. Now, we have one family where the matriarch, Adrienne Barbeau, they're absolutely against it. They don't want anything to do with it. And then we have the other family whose patriarch, Mark Blucas, is really struggling financially and sees this as a kind of a lifeline. This, of course, exacerbates tensions in the whole community, as no one really wants these, industrial kind of machines in the area, things like that. Nonetheless, this is what happens, and it not only really flares up tensions between the families and the community at large, but maybe unearths something far more dangerous that will have an effect on everyone. What that's going to be, you have to watch the movie to find out. So let's talk about Unearth. What do I think works with this movie? One of the things that I think is a positive and a negative to a point within this movie is the way this film is structured. Because it's unlike many other horror films. So let me explain. This movie is about an hour and a half long. And the literal first hour of this movie has nothing to do with horror. Not at all. It is not setting up scares, things, horror elements that are going to come into play later on. It is a pure drama about two families really struggling and how they are coping, or not coping more specifically, and how the challenges are really wearing them down. And then we get to the hour mark, and it's only then that the horror elements are really kind of introduced. And then even then, it's probably the last 15 minutes that it really does go kind of quite crazy. Now, why do I say that's different? Because, we see obviously films have the kind of finishing strong. The third act's always the big finale. But what films do the majority of time is they're peppering. They're kind of leading up to this point, showing you things and kind of giving you, little horror elements here and there. But this one doesn't do that at all. It's nothing. There's no horror. So when we do get to the horror elements within the movie, it's like watching a dramatic film about the tough lives that farmers have, and then all of a sudden having these horror elements introduced, which makes it very effective in a way, because you see these people who are portrayed to be real salt-of-the-earth people then have to deal with some fantastical issues, horror issues, which makes it seem all the more shocking. And we've bought into our characters, and they're kind of the realistic portrayal of the characters at that point. So these are definitely not your kind of like your horror stock characters and things like this. And it makes it really punctuates the horror elements to this movie. Now, we're going to come on to why the problems I have with it in a minute, but let me just kind of add on to that. I think this is really helped by some excellent performances from our cast here that really do, I think, give these characters some believability and, you know, a grounded cast that I think are all excellent in their roles, some great performances, and it's filmed in a way that it's not like flashy, it's not trying to be, you know, particularly kind of like, you know, weird camera angles or too arty. It comes across like a genuine drama film for that kind of that first hour. So you know, you're buying these characters and you're buying the struggles that these kind of characters are having. And you know, it's filmed, even though it's, you know, it shows you the struggles that these characters are you know, are facing. We still do see the kind of the, you know, the great surroundings and the kind of like the sense of freedom about why these characters maybe don't want to give up that kind of lifestyle and things like this. So I think it does a good job of kind of balancing that. And then, without kind of going into spoilers, let's talk about the horror stuff as well. Because this movie doesn't have that typical kind of horror build-up, with the cheesy characters and all that kind of stuff, it's very, very impactful when we do have these horror elements come into play. Because it really feels like it's happening to real people. And that's the major benefit of this movie and the way that it's done that. And the practical things that we see on screen are pretty gruesome. And there's one thing in particular, again, I'm not going to spoil it for you, that I was like, wow, I'm kind of shocked that they went there. It's kind of like, oof, that is pretty kind of shocking kind of stuff. So, you know, it's kind of a very interesting movie and told in a somewhat of a unique way, even though the story itself really isn't all that kind of unique itself. It's the way that this story is told that I think is the movie's main strength. But there is the downside to this. This movie, if you are watching it as a horror fan that doesn't like the kind of drama movies, that first hour may be a struggle to sit through. It's both you know, it works in the movie's favour because it makes it that much more impactful. But the trade-off is that first hour may be a little bit, you know, much to sit through for those of you who don't really want to watch kind of like a drama, so to speak. And to be honest, I can see I understand the critique, because it didn't need to do that. It could have told the story in a more of a traditional manner, I feel, and maybe would appeal to more of the traditional horror fan. It maybe wouldn't have been as impactful, but I think it may have been an easier pill to swallow. I also have to say, when we do get to our horror elements, to me it seemed a little rushed, because it's kind of cramming it all into this kind of like short running time towards the end of the movie. So although we get some great character work and kind of we really feel that we know the characters and things like this and their relationships to each other and the struggles that they're kind of going through, and we understand their kind of motivations and hesitations to do certain things, at the same time when we do end up having these horror elements towards the end of the movie, you kind of feel like it's a little rushed. I do have some other issues with the horror, that kind of that last act as well. To me, it didn't quite ring true. That the kind of the reality of the movie in that first hour, it's very grounded, very realistic. But then we get to the horror elements, and I feel the characters start working in a way that doesn't seem particularly realistic. Now, part of the charm of this movie is what's the real kind of problem here? Is it these long simmering issues that have been bubbling up to the surface? Does it have anything to do with this kind of like this drilling that's going on, or was the problem always there, or is it something kind of supernatural, or you know, something like that? But there's decisions made by characters, or lack of decisions, lack of care, and things like this that I feel like, would people really not do that? Would they not make that call? Would they not go and, you know, seek help from, you know, the emergency services, things like this? To me, there were elements here that may have been better explained had it been more fleshed out. You know, were these people under influence and things like this? Unfortunately, it's truncated into this kind of like the last act of the movie, and as such, it feels a little bit too much crammed in. There's also a kind of, not exactly a twist, but it's kind of the movie offers a you were kind of left up somewhat up to your imagination about what's happening, and it's to do the best. All I would say is it's kind of like levels of perception. So it's not exactly a twist per se, but the movie has like it offers you like, are things the way it's perceived to be exactly as they actually happened. Again, it's a little bit ambiguous. That might not really work. I don't really like ambiguous films. It's like, why don't you read a book but not read the last chapter and then make up your own mind about what happens? I want to see a story, told. I don't really like, if I'm watching a film, I want to follow the narrative. I don't really like things personally that are somewhat left ambiguous. Now, it doesn't quite do that, but it's kind of borders on that to a certain degree. So overall, though, it's a very unique film in the way that it's filmed, even though the story itself is a story that we've seen plenty of times. The Curse, again, it's very similar in the way that this story is told. I have to say, it's a very similar film to that. But it's done in such a unique manner. I've got to say, I enjoyed watching it, but I have to be honest with you, it was losing me a little bit in that first hour because it just seemed like a drama. And I know this is a horror film, so something's going to happen, but I can see people switching off about 45 minutes and thinking, nothing's happening. I can see that happening. So I'll give this a 6 out of 10. I do think it's a quality movie, but I do think the way this movie is made might be a little bit misjudged, although it does work with its intent, but I think it's cutting off its nose to spite its face to a certain degree. So it's a 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.